wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the healthy family podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Fuad Kassab.
Welcome to A Quirky Journey. This is your host Fuad Kassab from thefoodblog.com.au, and I have my beautiful co-host Jo Whitten from quirkycooking.com.au. Hi, Jo.
Hello.
I caught you off guard with that.
You did.
Like, what? Jo, we've got with us today for another episode my friend Lucy, who did the first episode on sleep with us last week or 2 weeks ago, and she's back to answer some questions and to delve more deeply into the topic. Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Lucy.
Hi, Fuad. Hi, Jo.
How you going?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Good.
Good. I think I've had like 8 hours sleep. I was very broken, so I'm struggling to get my sentences out. I'm not sure why, Lucy. Does it change the way that you speak if you haven't had good? See, I can't even talk now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think that it definitely can. I think your brain might be a bit foggy or something like that, and yeah.
My brother's just come back from Germany after 5 years overseas, and him and I are spending a bit more time later in the evening, to sort of hang out and chat a lot. And I've been going to bed much later than I'm used to, and also I'm usually used to like not talking much before going to bed, and now I'm going to bed and like my mind is still sort of going over all the conversations.
Yep.
5 years worth of catch up and my sleep, but it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's good. So
family reunion.
I'm finding the full moon's keeping me awake. I'm not a werewolf, but it's just that brightness in the window, so I've had to close it all up because it's so bright at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, it's beautiful.
It is.
We thought that those kinds of lights didn't really affect sleep quality, but it turns out that they do, don't they? I don't know.
I've had a lot of friends tell me the same thing. What about you, Lucy? What do you think?
The moon when it's too bright.
Yeah.
It's
like daylight out there.
There could definitely be something to that. I mean, I guess it depends on if it's shining right into your
room, into
your window. But then there's also those other things associated with weird occurrences during the full moon anyway. So
that's true.
Who knows? Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Just starting to scratch the surface of this stuff. But Lucy, we're going to focus this week on gut health, but we'd love to sort of have a bit of a recap about what we spoke about in the previous podcast, just in case people are listening in for the first time on episode 2 about sleep. So can you give us a bit of a background about what we spoke about last time?
Sure. So last time, one of the main things that we touched on was our circadian rhythm, so our internal body clocks and how they can be affecting sleep, and in turn the impact of technology on sleep. And so how that relates to the circadian rhythms is what I mentioned last time was as humans, in a historical sense, we evolved with the light and dark cycles of the sun and the moon. And the body also evolved to respond to different frequencies of light. So that would be the orange and the yellow spectrum of light, so the sun and the moon, the starlight, the candlelight, and then the blue light from technology. So basically a lot of our screens that we have in our lives these days actually emit light from the blue frequency, and what we've learned now is that has an impact on the nerve pathway in the brain that basically recognizes that blue light as an artificial type of sun. So when we have, when we're on our screens so close to bedtime, our bodies are sort of artificially being tricked into thinking that it's daytime when it's actually nighttime. And I think that's it's a common thing, I think, for most of us these days in the Western world. And so those types of things can definitely have an impact on sleep quality. We also talked about creating a sleep practice, so different strategies that, you guys could implement and take away to try, today. And I think at the end of the last show, we also mentioned that I could talk a little bit about gut health as it relates to sleep today. So,
fantastic. So this is really the topic that we are very keen to get into. One of the things that we want to clarify is there a relationship between gut health and sleep, and is it that gut health affects sleep, or is it the other way around, that sleep affects gut health? So what are your thoughts on that, Lucy?
Yeah, so I think what I'll do first is I'll set the stage a little bit on gut health and, as it can relate to sleep, and then we can discuss that further if you guys like. So the first thing that many of you would know is that, there's a very close relationship between the gut and the brain. So the gut is quite commonly known as the second brain. And in particular, there are many neurotransmitters and hormones involved in the sleep pathway that are located both in the gut and the brain. So basically, the state of our gut health as well as our brain health can have an impact on our sleep. There are many, in addition to the neurotransmitters in the sleep pathway, there are actually a lot of neurotransmitters, other types of neurotransmitters and hormones found both in the gut and the brain as well. And then the gut also consists of hundreds of millions of nerve cells. So there's something called the enteric nervous system, which is basically the nervous system found inside your gut. So enteric just meaning within the intestine or within the gut. And then I think a lot of you guys probably also know that our neurotransmitter serotonin, which is involved in the sleep pathway and is the precursor to the sleep hormone melatonin, that's also produced in the gut as well. So you can imagine that if, your gut health, there's an impairment there or something like that, this kind of production of, say, serotonin, which converts into melatonin, which gets us ready for sleep, there can be an impact there. And then something really interesting that I've actually learned quite recently is that it's actually been found that there's about 400 times more melatonin produced in the gut than in the pineal gland in the brain, which is, something that we've sort of been told the opposite of, that, it's always melatonin's produced in the brain, in the pineal gland. So, there's actually a lot more of it in the gut. And I think those birds are so beautiful, by the way.
Yeah, sorry, everyone. I'm not really sorry.
No.
I have this big open dining room with big windows, and we just have all these birds all around in the trees. It's so lovely. So that's what you're hearing.
Yeah. Sounds lovely. And I think like a really important part to mention is about the microbiome. So you guys would also know that just basically explains the bacteria and the microorganisms that inhabit our bodies and that are on our skin and our mouths, and most predominantly in our guts. And so we're actually 10 times more bacterial cells than we are human cells. And what has also been found by some researchers in UCLA is that there are trillions of bacteria in our guts that are continuously communicating with that enteric nervous system, and that certain bacteria play a role in the production of serotonin. So all of this kind of, I guess, highlights just how important gut health is for the regulation of a healthy sleep cycle. Because if your gut health and your microbiome are out of balance, your serotonin and your melatonin production, they're going to be affected, and those are two of the most important compounds for sleep. So that's it. That's it. A bit of it in a nutshell.
Doesn't gut health also affect adrenal function, and that's all connected with the sleep as well? Or no?
Definitely. It's there's the thing is that everything is so interconnected that one thing affects the other thing, and then there's a cascade of this and that. So definitely, definitely, because your cortisol is secreted from your adrenal glands, and then cortisol has an effect on sleep as well if it's high at the wrong times, like if it's high in the evening, supposed to be lower, and maybe if you do have some kind of adrenal fatigue, that can definitely impact on sleep as well.
And it goes both ways, doesn't it? So not getting sleep at the right times can affect your adrenal health. And not enough sleep.
It sounds like a vicious circle, though, doesn't it? Like,
how do you get out of it?
Yeah. It is a vicious circle, and I think that probably really also highlights that we need to do as much as we can of what you guys are promoting, and that's gut health is so important. So whether it's through everything, and I think we've heard as well that Hippocrates, that those many years ago, said that all disease begins in the gut. That's what we're really, really learning these days, and you're hearing about it, everywhere.
Yeah.
And whether that's through food, other lifestyle practices, and especially sleep as well. I think everything has an effect on the state of our gut and what's happening. With our gut bacteria, and they can affect our mood, which can also affect stress and anxiety, and it's as
which
you
is
said,
gigantic.
It's a vicious cycle. It's like
for sleep. I mean, I think for me, it's always been stress has always been the biggest one to interrupt sleep. If anything's going to interrupt it, it's if I'm stressed, and I think that's probably what it is for most people. I think that's where it would begin. You get the
stress management, you mean, or where?
Yeah, well, it could be. What I mean, the problems with sleep a lot of times starts with stress. It can be just over busyness and overwhelmed, and your brain's too full and it can't switch off. Or it could be you're anxious about something, or it could be that you're depressed about something, or you've had some terrible thing that's happened that you can't get through for a while, and that affects your sleep. There's so many people that I talk to with problems with anxiety, and I know it can partly be related to gut health, but it can also be things that they're just working through. But then, like you say, it is a vicious circle. So working on sleep
for
helps.
sure, like eating the wrong kind of food will definitely affect your anxiety level. So if you have moderate anxiety, it will be exacerbated by the wrong food.
Yeah.
So what I found personally is when I started eating better, my mood improved, then I started being able to go to bed and consistently stay asleep for longer.
Yeah.
And then I'd wake up the next day, I was able to make better choices because I slept better at night. So that reinforced the good eating habits, which further alleviated my mood and then made my sleep better, which then again started fixing it. So it's sort of
taking you up out of the spiral.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so it was just
works both ways.
A really wonderful thing to just that's right. So you work on both. That's what I've felt, but they also start complementing each other. Like when one starts getting better, the other one starts improving as well as a side effect to it.
I just have to ask. Okay, go.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask Lucy. I just have to ask you, Lucy, what you think about coffee, because so many people ask that.
Yes.
Should I be drinking coffee?
That's something I wanted to say last time too, because Fuad, you gave an example of, you said that sometimes you'll sleep through the night and it'll be fine, and then other times you might kind of wake up or you're a little bit restless and you're not really sure if it's related to something in your lifestyle. And so that was one of the other things that I wanted to mention was I think caffeine can be fine for some people depending on the state of their health, and obviously the quality of where you're going to get that from, the quality of your coffee.
And also genetics.
And yes,
genetics. My son had his gene testing done, and he's never wanted coffee. He's 17, and he's always drunk tea, and it's decaf. And it was really funny when his genetic testing came back. They said he cannot handle caffeine. Don't give him coffee. And I was like, well, that's funny because he already doesn't want it. His body already told him that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know people like that as well. Yeah. And so there definitely is that genetic factor, and I think there's also. Like you mentioned before, Joe, if someone's got adrenal fatigue or something like that in terms of their health, then it's probably not the best thing. But if you're someone that, you don't maybe have too much trouble with sleep, or if you do, of course, I think keeping it to earlier in the day.
Yes, that's what I find. If I have one after lunch, that's it for me. I can't sleep.
Yes, definitely. I'm the same. So I don't drink a lot of coffee, but when I do, I have to definitely have it before midday because my sleep will definitely be affected that in the evening. And that there can be a few things going on with that. So caffeine is a nervous system stimulant. So your nervous system can be ramped up for up to, hours upon hours. And depending on, again, like if you've got a genetic, you're sensitive to that or something like that, it can remain in your body. So different people will have it remain in their body for different periods of time and have it sort of stimulate them for different amounts of time too. So I think there's a place for it. Yeah.
I was working in an office, like as an IT guy, like years ago, and I remember, like I used to drink a lot of coffee. I used to maybe have 3 or 4 a day, and since I've sort of changed the way that I live and I work from home and I get more sunshine and things like that, what I found is I can wake up in the morning and sometimes have a coffee. Like often I will have a coffee, but I can definitely skip it without a problem. And then what would happen is I wouldn't crave it all day long afterwards. But if I did somehow go out for a coffee with a friend or something, let's say at 1 o'clock, and I had a coffee then no way will I be able to sleep. And I find that there's something about like having a stressful life where like if you're really stressed and you sort of are craving caffeine at frequent times during the day, then there's something that's happening that you're not addressing. Like the caffeine is sort of being used to actually prop you up, and it's really worth looking at, like trying to see how much caffeine you're craving during the day and trying to sort of work on your sleep and your healing, because you find that the needs for caffeine goes down, and also you start seeing the detrimental effects of it as well if you're having too much of it and too late during the day.
I think that's a really good point, because I find when I'm eating well and I'm really healthy, I don't crave it at all. I just, now and then I'll have one just for the flavour, but it's not because I'm craving it. And the same with chocolate, because I know I joke about chocolate and post about it on my Facebook a lot and stuff, and people think I eat it all the time, but I don't eat it hardly at all. And it's just something that is like a fun flavour to me. It's not something I have to have a block of every day.
Let's not say that you don't eat it hardly at all. You eat a lot of chocolate.
Oh,
what are you talking about?
I haven't had any for a few weeks, actually.
Yeah. When I say, Joe, how are you doing? She goes, I'm sad today.
I haven't got any chocolate. That's because I'm doing a rerun of Gap's intro, so I'm not having any cocoa, cacao, coffee, caffeine.
I think when you're restricted by it, you probably feel it like you're just not having it at all.
I'm not actually.
Like when you, it's funny though.
But yeah, it's just something that everybody loves, I think, and so you have a joke about it. But yeah, I've never been the type that could sit down and eat a whole heap of chocolate at once. That would make me ill. Anyway,
same here.
Got off the subject there.
Yeah, we digress.
Phil didn't believe me, but
yeah. All right, Lucy, we've got a bunch of questions from our listeners, and we'd love to go through. Sorry?
We've got heaps, but we'll just have to do some.
Heaps. Yeah. That's right. We've hand-picked a few of them that will go well with the gut health episode. One person, Rochelle, was asking about the gut-sleep connection, which we've already covered, but she wants to know a little bit more about your mercury detox. So can we have a chat about what happened with the mercury detox for you, and if you can give us some background there and how that dealing with that has affected sleep for you?
Sure. I might just briefly talk about just a brief thing about heavy metals and my experience with them, and then I'll relate it back to my sleep. So, what I learned through the functional medicine doctor that I'm working with, and just through my own research as well, is that toxicity in different heavy metals. Mine in particular was mercury and arsenic, and I think mercury is one of the mitochondrial poisons, and so are many of the other ones. So basically, they can have all sorts of physiological impact on our bodies. So whether it's impairing the immune system, and mercury actually specifically can build up in your system and affect every cell in your body, as far as I've researched. So, and then there's other things that it can do. So it can cause fatigue and impair your liver detoxification, and in some cases it's been linked to anxiety and depression and other things like that too. So there's a bit of a relation back there to the gut as well, like it's all kind of intricately linked, as we mentioned. There is also the issue of how well your body can actually detoxify those metals, because in modern life these days, I mean, we're all exposed to so many different types of metals without even probably really knowing it, whether it's in the air or it's in food or it's some other environmental way. So how well our bodies can actually get rid of those is another story. And so basically something interesting that I found when working with my doctor is that through all the different functional testings that I'd done, it turns out that it looks as though my body is defective in the gene that's actually responsible for clearing mercury out of the body. So basically what that then means is that because my body can't get rid of it efficiently and effectively, it built up in my liver, and then what ends up happening is it causes a cascade of effects, as we mentioned before. So whether that's through just different organ systems of the body, impairing gut health, impairing brain health, and things like that. And so, yeah, due to the close relationship of sleep to gut health and brain health, as we mentioned before, definitely heavy metals can most certainly be a contributor to sleep issues. So what I found over time now is, like, I've been doing the protocol with my doctor for about a year or so, and slowly, as I've been going through the protocol, I have found improvements in my sleep. So where I was waking up before at 3 a.m. and sometimes even 2 a.m. every night, I'm able to sleep a little bit longer, which is great. It's not completely uninterrupted, and I'm not feeling, completely refreshed when I wake up yet, but it's definitely improved. And
what is the protocol that you do?
Yeah. So it's basically a very specific supplement protocol that involves, so it involves a few different types of supplements that are targeted towards either binding and mobilizing the metals out of the system and just removing them. And then, as well as, because of the cascade of effects that it's had in other functions of my body, I've had to kind of, the doctors recommended me different types of other nutrient supplements as well to support, whether it's brain health, gut health, mitochondrial function, and just lots of different nutrient support. And so that's something that kind of, all these things are sort of a work in progress over time. So it's not something that can be corrected, in a few weeks or even a few months. It's something that sort of happens over time. So
do you, is this like a biomedical doctor or what kind of?
Yes, a functional medicine doctor. So,
if anyone's wondering where to find one of those, if you go onto the Mind website, MINDD, they have functional medicine practitioners listed on there. Because I think a few people will ask about that. I did have one lady, can I just quickly ask you, she said that her little boy is struggling with detoxing, and she's doing gaps, and he's started waking again in the night. He's 4, and as his body is detoxing, his sleep is getting worse. Does that often happen? Like, does it get worse before it gets better when you're detoxing?
I think, that's going to be an individual thing as well, but I think what I could say to that is that, like when our bodies are pulling out, toxins and, constantly clearing these things, I think this, in the same way that, when you're doing, whether it's any kind of detox, or changing even the way you eat, you can feel a lot worse before you can feel better. And that build up of time. Yeah, exactly. And that build up of toxins is probably for this particular child, is really impacting him, whereas then maybe others might not have the same issue. It might not be a problem at all.
Yeah.
I know that when I started doing my detox and I was researching the different types of things that were recommended for me, I saw a whole lot of reviews on people saying, oh, this particular thing that I was using, I felt really ill, and it's very, very potent, so be careful, and that kind of thing. But I found for me, I felt fine. I didn't get any kind of weird symptoms or headaches or
I guess it depends how
like
toxic
that.
you are, does it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I would say to that. Yes.
Okay.
But it is hard to say again specifically because there's a lot of reasons. As with sleep in general, there's a lot of reasons why someone would have sleep issues or depending on what's going on overall. Yeah.
It's like Fuad said before, you just work on all the things that you can at once, and
Definitely.
We've got another question from Sally, who says, I would please love to know why I wake up every morning at 3 a.m. and that's it for the night.
Yes. Well, that's exactly what happened to me about 4 years ago. And the thing about that is, again, depending on the individual, there are so many different reasons why someone could be doing that. There's so many different reasons why someone could be having sleep issues. But I guess, I could go over a few things that could possibly be something to look into and further discuss or research that I kind of found while I was researching and going through all this. So there's a few different things. So parasites is something that could be worth looking into. So whether doing a stool test with a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor, because quite often if you're someone where parasites has taken over your gut, parasites actually, they're awake at night. They come awake at night, and so
especially at the full moon.
That's something. Yeah, exactly. So that's definitely something that that can be the issue for some people. Another one that comes to mind is inverted cortisol rhythm. So what I mean by that is when we're going to sleep in the evening, our cortisol shouldn't be too high because that's something that can keep us awake. And in the morning, usually our cortisol is a little bit higher so that we can, for wakefulness, and we can get through the day. And if you've got like an inverse rhythm in that, so maybe a bit too high in the evening or a bit too low in the morning, that's something that can potentially sort of have your circadian rhythm disrupted and your internal body clock thrown off, and therefore you're waking at, maybe too earlier than you should be. So that's something. And then in relation to that, so something that I have learnt through traditional Chinese medicine is that they talk about, so there's different times of the evening that correspond to different organ systems of the body, and that the 3 a.m. is correlated with the liver, and that may mean for a specific person that possibly there's some liver detoxification issues or there's something happening within the liver at that time. But again, that's a very individual thing as well. Other things that I could be related as well is electromagnetic radiation. So, for example, sorry, there's a bit of, I think, interruption in the background. So electromagnetic radiation, so that could be anything from, wireless devices in the house, mobile phones, computers, things like that. So those kinds of things, depending on the person, can also interrupt the proper functioning of our bodies, and then therefore for some people can wake them up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And that's probably one that that's going to be definitely very individual as well. And then just like we talked about before, so stress as well. Stress, quite often, whether it's emotional, but it could even be something environmental or some kind of chemical stress, that can be something that can impact sleep and cause people to wake up in the middle of the night as well. But I think...
Sorry, I was wondering with regards to someone like Sally, would she start off with like approaching the lifestyle things first? Would she go and turn the router off before going to bed and all the artificial light and things like that? Or do you recommend, if this has been happening consistently, say at 3 a.m. all the time, that she starts getting tested for heavy metals and parasites and things like that? How would you approach it?
I think the first thing would be is that, as you mentioned, it's got to be the food and the lifestyle factors first. So because again, also something that I haven't mentioned yet is that there could be, even if you've got a food sensitivity, there's certain foods that you're eating, maybe you're not eating as clean as possible. That's also something that can contribute as well. So I think getting your food in check is really, really important. Obviously, movement throughout the day and you know, other types of lifestyle factors. Definitely, if you've got to go those first. But if you still find that there's something going on and you keep on waking up, then it probably is a good idea to maybe try and get some testing through a naturopath or a functional medicine doctor, because I found that when I started waking up at that time, those years ago, I had so many things in order. So the food, the movement, you know, spending time out in nature and going to sleep at, well, that's probably the other thing, is that going to sleep in time as well. So getting enough sleep before midnight. So whether it's maybe if you can sort of, I think we talked about this in the last episode, but sleep timing is very important as well. So, you know, ideally we would be going to bed, say, around 9 or 10 p.m., but of course that's going to be different for different people's lifestyles, but that's really something to look at as well, so the timing that you're going to sleep. And if you feel like you really can't figure it out, then I think working with someone that's got a bit more experience would be a good place to go.
Have you ever been to a sleep, what do they call them? They're like a specialist...
clinics or something?
Yeah.
I listened to one just recently on a gut health summit, and I've forgotten what the name of the job is. It's like a doctor that specialises in sleep.
Do you mean like if you were to go to a sleep centre and they were to observe how?
I'm not sure. I think he's he's a specialist that you go to,
okay.
And he does the sleep. He checks all your sleep patterns and. Anyway, he was speaking on a gut health summit recently. I'll have to look up his name, but I can't remember.
Okay, no, that's a good one. I mean, I haven't. Yeah. I actually haven't.
But that's, for some people, that may be an option, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I haven't heard of this.
Awesome. I'll look it up.
Lucy, a question that's sort of it's come from a few different people, so I'll sort of put it in one. But like we've got Brooke and Alison, they've asked about foods to eat or not to eat before bed, and Alison in particular wanted to know a bit about carbs and sleep. And also from me, like to add to that is not only what type of food to eat before sleep, but also food timing, like when you should eat. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
Yeah. So firstly, if it's possible, it's best to try and actually eat a couple of hours before bedtime, simply because our bodies are running on circadian rhythm timing. So there's digestive processes that are influenced by this, and we don't want our bodies to kind of be working too hard to digest our food if we're eating so close to bedtime, because there's so many other processes that need to happen while we're sleeping. And in order to maximize our body's ability for restful sleep, not eating too close to bedtime would be helpful. But however, you know, it depends on the person's lifestyle as well. So sometimes maybe, you know, it might be difficult to not sort of have that gap, and you might just have to have something to eat and go to sleep and get up for work. So if you are someone that needs maybe a snack closer to bedtime, something that will keep your blood sugar stable and won't be too difficult to digest, could be something like maybe some handfuls of nuts, as the healthy fats they're not going to they're not going to spike your blood sugar, and they're also quite good as a brain food. So something like that would be okay as a snack. Foods to avoid is probably going to be a really big thing as well. especially before bed, because certain things like refined sugar and gluten-containing products, those can actually cause a blood sugar spike and then a crash. And if your blood sugar drops too low in the middle of the night, that can wake you up. So that's something to be mindful of as well. And then another thought is that there's actually quite a few health professionals promoting saving your whole food carbohydrate sources until the evening at dinner. So whether that's sweet potatoes or pumpkin or potatoes or whatever you like, and instead of earlier in the day. And that's for the main the main reason as it relates to sleep is that the carbohydrates influence the release of the neurotransmitter serotonin, which, as we learnt before, is in the sleep pathway and is a precursor to melatonin that helps us sleep. So that and I've actually experimented with that for me, and I've found that it does kind of help you. I don't know, you sort of feel a little bit more sleepy, and it does help. So I think carbs in the evening, as what was asked before, it can be a good thing, but it's going to definitely be the quality of the carbohydrate. So it's not just going to be any carbohydrate source.
I've also
I found personally with sweet potatoes, like I used to do like some serious low carbing back in the day when I was regaining my health and I was suffering from being pre-diabetic and all that. And after a while of being low carb for a long time, I found that adding a sweet potato, but mixing it with something like cinnamon and coconut oil or butter, which sort of like doesn't spike your insulin as high, sort of levels out the sugar and slows down the digestion. I found that helped massively with sleep, and also like it helped me relax more at night. So that was really beneficial. But that was when I was sort of seriously low carbing, and just adding that carb back in was really helpful. But if someone is eating carbohydrates, like, do you think like they can have like their sourdough or their grains or something like that, or should they just stick to like a root vegetable, or what should they
what kind of
do
carbs?
for the
I would probably strongly recommend starting with things, if you can, that are gluten-free. So as you mentioned, sweet potatoes, pumpkin potatoes, I would think that I would favour those for sure. Because I think, but then having said that, I guess it will also depend on the person as well. So if someone, really can't tolerate something like that, then obviously that might not be a good option for them. But I think it might be a matter of maybe just trialing that. Like if you feel like you do okay on a rice sourdough and you do that, save that for the evening instead of having that early in the day, then it might be something to just try and see how you go.
I've heard bananas are good before sleeping. It might be.
Yeah, I mean fruit as well. Yeah, for sure.
The potassium and stuff, isn't it? Magnesium.
Yeah. Yes. I think bananas and other types of fruits would be okay as well.
Bananas with cinnamon, apparently.
Oh, yum.
Yeah, the spices, like their purpose is to sort of slow down the digestion of the starch.
When you eat them,
they're just like they go through your intestines much more slowly, and they lower the glycemic index of food just through the way that they get mixed in. So that's why if you add usually there's 3 types of things that people would add, and that would be like in traditional cultures they add them in anything. Like let's say pick something like rice, and in the Middle East we always cook it with fat. In Asia, for instance, you look at sushi rice, and that's you add vinegar into it. And, the reason why they would do that is to lower the glycemic index. I mean, of course, it had culinary uses as well. It tastes better. But they would never sort of just cook it and just eat it like that with nothing else, because it would just create too high a sugar. So that's the vinegar or any kind of acid.
And in Mexico,
really
it's the beans with the rice.
Yeah, that's even more carbs. That's crazy stuff.
But it's
But they do go with a lot of pork fat as well, so they'll use a lot, in their stews. So there'll be a lot of fat in there as well. I mean, like all cultures have bean in rice dishes mostly.
Yeah, that's true.
That's quite common, especially you come from the Middle East all the way through to Europe and in the Americas. But so there's that, and of course the spices as they get added into the dishes, they sort of bulk it out and lower the glycemic index. So that's really good. It kind of gives you that kind of sustained energy release throughout the night, and just helps so that your cortisol doesn't act up as much. It's quite helpful. So if people are trying to low carb too much, that's a good tip for them, I think. Okay, shift work. We'll go on to the last topic here, which is shift work, and we have Drana, or Drana, I'm not really sure how to say it, is asking, how can shift workers improve their sleep, particularly when on rotating rosters and aren't able to have a sleep routine? And Desiree is asking, I'm interested in suggestions to support the change from night shift to normal sleeping hours for someone on permanent night shift.
Yes. Okay. If you really can't avoid night shift, then I think the most important thing to say is it's going to be even more important to stay on top of your nutrition and your movement and your stress and your sleep and your other lifestyle factors. It's going to be even more important, because adding that stress of sleep deprivation, especially on top of, say, a mismatch in circadian rhythms when you're having to work that night shift, that can really impact health. So things that might help with that. So sticking to a regular schedule, even if it is inverted to the natural cycles of the light and the dark, at least so that your body has a regular timed routine, that's going to be really, really important. So if you can sort of try and do the same things at the same times each day, so whether that's eating at the same time and going to sleep at the same time, your body will have that routine. And then also since we spoke previously about our bodies responding to the light and the dark cycles of the sun and the moon, even though you can't exactly change these things while you're working on night shift, what you can do is make some adjustments in your life to readjust your body to the light and the dark rhythms to help with your sleep. So, for example, if you're working overnight, maybe if you can, like being exposed to lights at work can actually help signal your body that it's your specific daytime. And then when you come home and you're going to sleep, keeping your room dark and blacked out will also be helpful as well. So that kind of emulates your body that it is nighttime. And I think there's actually a couple of really good articles that I've seen in regards to night shift, and we can put that in the notes if you like. But there's the Nom Paleo website. She's got a really good article called Surviving the Night Shift, and she did night shift for about 12 years, I think it was, and so she kind of had a lot of things that she's implemented and that's helped her. And then there's also on Mark's Daily Apple is a good article there as well. But I think those things are the main really, really important things you can do if you really can't change.
Yeah, these are great sources, because both those websites sort of write these articles in a way that is really approachable and for the common man like us. So it's not highly scientific or technical, and usually quite practical, and it'll go a long way into educating yourself, because they do break down the science in a way that's easy to digest for us. Definitely, recommend looking at those two websites. I really like them.
Exactly.
I'll just quickly mention I found the name of that guy that I was talking about, the sleep specialist, Dr. Cunnington. He's in Melbourne.
Okay.
He runs a sleep disorders centre. And his his website is Sleep Hub. Sleep Hub.
Okay, cool. Great.
Yeah.
Lucy might be going to Melbourne then next week, and then she'll phone back in to report on the progress.
He's actually got a podcast and YouTube and all sorts of stuff, so there might be some interesting stuff on there as well.
Okay, I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
Well, we should get Lucy and him on the same podcast, so Lucy can drill him with all the questions.
Yeah, that's right. There you go. Free consultation.
That would be awesome. Did you want me to mention the name of my doctor?
Sure.
In case, because I know there's people that are interested in heavy metal. So I'm working with Dr. Bruce Jones, and he's based in Melbourne, and I just consult with him through Skype, and I actually found him through listening to a couple of different podcasts, American podcasts, and he was talking about heavy metals, and that's one of his specialties, and so he's really, really helped me. So his website, I can't remember the exact address, but it's Peninsula Clinical Nutrition, and that's Dr. Bruce Jones. So he's been really helpful.
If you want to give us the link too, we can put those in the notes. Yeah.
It's peninsulanutrition.com.au.
Okay.
So I got it. Cool. Looks like a happy guy. Which is great. Yeah.
He is.
He sleeps well, that's why.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
Did you have
any further questions for Lucy, or
did you have any more there written down to answer, Lucy? I haven't got the list in front of me. Sorry.
We've gone through it.
Oh, so, good. Well done.
Yeah.
I noticed there was a lot of questions about babies and small children's sleep, but I feel like that's even another podcast. We could maybe do a podcast with Mary on that. That would be good too, because that's sort of related to, a lot of it is stuff that mums just need to work through with babies.
Yeah, very much an obligatory mode of living for a while. When you just had a baby.
It is. Yeah, so. And I used to actually counsel mums for about 10 years on all that stuff, so I'd love to do a podcast on it. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great.
Sleep training.
Cool. All right. Well, Lucy, thank you so much for coming back on the show, and hopefully we'll get you back again as your story continues to progress and we learn a bit about what's going on with you and you see more results. We'd love to share those with our listeners. So thank you so much for coming back on the show with us.
Thanks, Lucy.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks, Fuad.
You've been very patient with us, swapping times around.
It's no problem at all. Absolutely. Is it okay if I just say one last thing?
Sure.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say thank you both so much for having me on the podcast. It's actually been like a real pleasure and a privilege, and I really, really appreciate it. So thank you.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And I guess I also just wanted to say, if anyone hasn't listened to Fuad's interview on Up for a Chat, I highly recommend that you do, because it is a really, really interesting conversation. And I just wanted to say that, Fuad, you're someone that I think is, you're authentic and you're speaking your truth, and you're out there, and you're doing your thing, and you've got the world at your feet at the moment, and I think that you're doing really, really great things out there, and I'm really, really proud of you, and it's really great to call you a friend, and so I just wanted to say that, and Joe, to you as well, I just wanted to say as well. So we obviously haven't spent so much time together, but I can, just by the interactions that we've had with each other, I can see that, you're such a kind, beautiful soul, and, you're doing amazing things out there in the world as well. And, I look up to both you guys, and, thank you for everything that you guys do.
Oh, Lucy,
thank you Lucy.
So much. Thank you. This is the way the world works. Like Joe dragged me into this world, and just because of her amazing energy and the love that she has to share with people and bring wellness and health to them, and it's just wonderful to be able to share this with you and have you share your message. And so really we love it. This is the kind of stuff that we love doing, and who would complain about doing something like this for a living? It's the best thing ever, so it's just a privilege to us.
I was just thinking before, what I really love is when we get people on the podcast that are not, they're not celebrities, they're not well-known people, but they're just making such a difference in their, where they are. They're doing something about their health, they're helping others, and nobody may know, not very many people may know their name, but I just love getting them on the podcast and hearing their stories. And when I'm traveling, I often meet like mums with kids that are at home, and they're just doing amazing things. And I think they need a voice, they need to be heard. Everybody's heard the celebrity stories, but they haven't heard the mums at home or the the people with smaller blogs or, you know, people that have amazing things to share as well. So I think the podcast is just such a great place to do that. And it's just awesome meeting people like you, Lucy. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, likewise, Jo. Thank you.
So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thank you again. It was a pleasure.
Okay. And everybody, if you didn't hear the first episode with Lucy, that's part 1 on sleep nutrition. And so make sure you listen into that one. And, of course, give us a 5-star rating.
Yes.
Only 5 stars allowed.
Well, you know, we would say 10, but they don't let you have that option. But
Twice.
Do it twice. Oh, we have a lot of fun. All right. You guys have a great week, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Bye.
Bye.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.